And about 4 hours into Dave's shift, he received a text message from Carrie that was very different than the text messages that he usually received from Carrie. And the text just said, "I think we should move in together." Okay, this is a no strings attached thing. I thought we were on the same page here. I'm not feeling this energy. And Carrie was not having it. Carrie started blowing up Dave's phone, and she was just getting more and more angry, like she was working herself up with each text message that she sent, getting ruder and meaner. And she even went on to say that Dave ruined her life, just absolutely jumping to crazy conclusions. She started saying, "I never want to see you again, you ruined my life, I hate you." Just borderline psychotic behavior after 2 weeks of seeing somebody. She said, "I'll destroy your life and take your happiness." When I tell you this man swiped right on an absolute psychopath, I beg you to never use dating apps. Guys, if you're new here, we tell crazy stories, the most crazy ones that we could find. Today's is about an online connection that turned into a real life stalking, and you're going to love it. I'm going to be quick. Like, subscribe, notification bell. It all helps. I'm going to get right into the story because I don't want to wait even a second. Okay, guys, there's a lot of moving parts in this story, so I'm going to break down the characters beforehand so it's easy for you guys to follow along. So bear with me. Main character, the man that this story revolves around, is named Dave. So Dave is the main guy. Dave has a baby mama named Amy. They met each other, they fell in love, they had 2 kids, but then they split up. After Dave and Amy split up, he met a woman online named Liz. So Liz is his first fling. After Liz, he had a second fling named Carrie. Carrie is a very interesting character you will see very soon, but Carrie had a mother named Nancy. Then there are 2 detectives in this story named Chris and Jim. Both just sheriffs and detectives. And then we have 2 special detectives named Ryan and Tony. So one more time through, we have Dave, we have Liz, we have Carrie, we have Nancy, Carrie's mom, we have 2 sheriffs named Chris and Jim, and then we have 2 special detectives named Ryan and Tony. That's it, I'm gonna get started. So Dave started dating Amy and they built a family together. They met a little bit earlier in life and they both were looking for a serious relationship, and they found each other, and you know how it goes. They started mingling and they ended up popping out a couple kids. But issues started popping up in Dave and Amy's relationship because they were a low-income household, and Dave had to work mornings and Amy had to work late nights. So they barely got to spend any time together. And when you don't get to spend that much time with your partner and you guys don't get to talk over things, you're just spending all of your time trying to earn enough money to feed your children, and you have no quality time together, you just start to drift apart. And they just kept drifting and drifting and drifting until the point where they just mutually said, "I think we want to see other people. I think our run is over," and they actually decided to split up mutually. But it wasn't that bad of a breakup. They just knew that they fell out of love. Dave still loved his kids and wanted to be in his kids' life, and Amy still had love for Dave. She just wanted to go separate ways because she knew it wasn't going to work. But it wasn't a messy breakup by any means. They were co-parenting and still in each other's lives. And after their breakup, Amy wanted to go live closer to her parents. She wanted to go back to her hometown to have a little bit more of a support system because she didn't have a husband anymore. So Amy decided to move back to Omaha, Nebraska. And just like I said, they didn't have a bad relationship. Dave wanted to be near his kids, so he's like, "I don't really care about the job I have over here. I'm going to move to Omaha, Nebraska too, because I'm going to be there for my kids no matter what. I'm going to be in their lives." Dave really didn't seem like that bad of a guy. He was just kind of in a little midlife crisis, wanted to date around. After Amy and Dave settled into Omaha, they obviously both started looking for new jobs. Dave was a mechanic, so he found one pretty easy. Amy got settled in at a job and everything seemed to be okay. And Dave started to have a little bit more room in his life to start dating a little bit. He was feeling a little bit lonely. You know, he's used to having a wife at home and kids and always coming home to a lively house, and now he's living on his own and he has a bunch of free time to himself. And not to mention, Dave wanted to date around. He was in that kind of midlife crisis area where he's like, "I want some girlfriends, no strings attached. I'm trying to have a little bit of fun. I got married and had kids pretty young, and I'm trying to live a little bit." And Dave was really honest about that. He wasn't looking for anything serious. But when you're in Omaha, Nebraska and you're working all the time, it's not like you're going out to all these nice clubs and bars and all these meetups where there's a bunch of different options. His only option really was online dating. And like I said, he was honest. So on his online dating profiles, he basically just put, "I'm not trying to be monogamous. I'm here for a good time. No strings attached. If you want to date, I'm here for it." So he went on to Plenty of Fish, made his profile, made a very honest bio, and he went search. Out of the 10,000 people that were possible matches for him in Omaha, Nebraska, this very honest profile led him to get a whopping 0 matches initially. Because of course, he's a middle-aged man looking for middle-aged women, and no middle-aged woman is looking for a no-strings-attached, non-monogamous relationship. They're looking to settle down. So of course he got 0 matches. And obviously Dave was a little bit disappointed with this. He felt a little bit unwanted. He's like, am I really that bad? I got 0 matches out of 10,000. And he's feeling a little bit insecure the first day, but he's not giving up. He gets home from his shift and he opens that laptop right back up the second day. And wouldn't you know it, there's 1 match. He got somebody. And naturally, he just matches back because he's trying to get a little connection going. And the woman that he matched with is named Liz. And Liz expresses real interest in him. She's down for a little casual date. She's trying to meet up. She's trying to have a good time. And they actually had so much in common. They both had 2 kids, they both loved heavy metal music, and they both loved motorcycles. So right off the bat, they were interested in the same thing, they had a lot of things to talk about, and they started hitting it off a little bit and hanging out a little bit. And as they started chatting, Dave found out a little bit more about her. Liz expressed that she was also very lonely in her life. She was a single middle-aged woman with kids, and she just wanted some type of excitement and some type of love in her life. She was a huge animal lover. She had 2 dogs, a cat, and a snake, and Dave thought this is a perfect match for him at this point in his life. She's looking for the exact same things that he is, and she's sweet, and she has kids and animals, and he's like, this is perfect. As they're chatting over the internet, he actually decides to ask her out, and Dave hadn't been on a date in years, so he was actually a little bit nervous to meet Liz. But once they finally met, they absolutely hit it off. It was the same thing as through texts. They really had a lot in common, and they really enjoyed spending time together. He spoke so highly of Liz. He said her energy was so friendly and electric, and they started hitting the bars together, and it was really everything that he was looking for. But either way, no matter how much they had in common, no matter how much fun he had with her, he really expressed that he wanted a no-strings-attached relationship. Even after they started getting intimate very quickly, and you know how that could go sometimes after you get intimate, sometimes feelings are caught, he was very firm with that he was not looking for a long-term partnership. He was looking to have fun. And he made that extremely clear to Liz. And she seemed to be completely okay with it. And they would just hang out and go to bars and get intimate, and everything seemed pretty good. But Liz was Dave's only option at that point. He really did only get 1 match. So even though he didn't want to be monogamous, he only had 1 option. But that all changed when one day Dave was working at his mechanic shop and a very fine-looking woman came to his mechanic shop to get her car fixed. He found this woman very, very attractive, and he was flirting with her a little bit, but he wasn't trying to exchange numbers. He wasn't being overbearing to her. He actually just let her leave, but she did leave a lasting impression on him. He was thinking about her a little bit because, like I said, Dave was trying to date around a little bit. But a couple weeks later, he's scrolling through Plenty of Fish again, and he actually comes across the profile of that same woman that he saw at his mechanic shop. And he gets a bit excited because he found this girl very attractive, and now he found out that she's single and also on the same dating site that he's on. And even though Dave was having a very good time with Liz, he was interested in other women too. So he shot that woman a DM. This woman's name was Carrie Farver, and he just messaged Carrie, "Hey, I know you." And wouldn't you know it, Carrie responded pretty quickly, "Hey, I know you too." So she was feeling him a little bit too. So they start texting, they're flirting. She's interested. She got the same vibe from him at the mechanic shop. They start talking, and Dave's pretty pumped because now he has Liz and now he has Carrie. He's in a little fun love triangle. He has options. This is exactly what he was looking for. And Carrie goes on to tell Dave that she also has a young son, but she moved over here to get a bigger job. She had a big opportunity over here and she wanted some freedom. She wanted to make a little bit more money for her son. And she just said that computers were her thing. She was very good with computers. And Dave mentioned that Carrie was out of his league. He couldn't believe he was on a date with this girl. He was feeling her. He said that she was smart and sexy and fun and different from any of the other women that he was meeting and texting. He was actually very interested in Carrie. Even though he had this thing in the back of his mind that he didn't want to be monogamous, he had a little bit of a different feeling about Carrie. And they went on a date and they actually hit it off, and he couldn't believe it. And at the end of the date, he actually invited Carrie back to his house. And he was honest with Carrie about not wanting to be monogamous, and she seemed completely cool with it too. She was in this new state to make money and get away from her single mom life back at home. So she was down for this. So they finish up their great date and they head back to Dave's apartment. And they go upstairs and they're in his apartment for less than a minute when they hear the doorbell ring. And this is where it gets super awkward. There's somebody standing outside, and it's Liz. And Liz told Dave that she had forgotten something in his apartment. He wasn't expecting this at all. He didn't want these two girls to cross paths. He liked keeping them separate, and it was a very awkward situation, but he handled it well, and he just went back upstairs and he told Carrie, "Hey, there's this other woman that I'm seeing. She left something here. She needs to grab it right now. And Carrie's like, hey, this is pretty awkward, but I'm cool with it. I'm just gonna leave, do what you gotta do. We'll meet up again soon. So Dave walks Carrie down the stairs and out of his apartment, and she has to walk by Liz. And these two women only crossed paths for like 3 seconds. They made minimal eye contact. They saw each other for 3 seconds tops before Carrie got past her, went to her car, and left. And Dave obviously felt super awkward, gave Liz a couple apologies. Let's just go upstairs and grab what you forgot, and let's move on with our nights. He just wanted to get the situation over with. And that's exactly what happened. Liz just went upstairs, grabbed the thing that she forgot, because she just genuinely forgot it. And then Dave, being the sly dog that he is, gives Carrie a call on her way home. And he explains himself and the situation, apologizes a little bit. But Carrie's like, hey, I'm a couple minutes from my house. If you want to drive over here instead, we could do that. And Dave is like, that sounds good to me. And he hops in his car. He goes straight to Carrie's house. And Carrie lives in Iowa, right outside of the border of Nebraska. So it's a different state, but it's actually a very close drive. And when Dave arrived, Carrie said she was cool with the whole situation. It was a little bit awkward, but she reassured Dave that she was okay with his non-monogamous lifestyle. She was just genuinely here looking for a good time. And she was cool with it. She was like, hey, we're not boyfriend and girlfriend. I get it. Don't feel weird about it. I'm happy you're here. And this was music to Dave's ears. He was so pumped to hear this because he was pretty high on Carrie. She was smart and sexy. And he was happy to drive all the way over to Iowa and spend the night with her at her place, because it really seemed like they wanted the same thing. And Carrie and Dave actually started spending a lot more time together because Carrie worked only about 3 blocks away from his apartment, so it was super convenient for them to meet up. And their relationship seemed very balanced with intimacy and chatting. They did really just enjoy each other's company, and they were truly just getting to know each other and just enjoying the non-monogamous style of relationship that they had. There really was no strings attached here. But one day, Carrie slept over at Dave's apartment. And of course, Dave had to get up at 6 a.m. to go to work. He works at a mechanic shop. He had to get up before Carrie. But they had done this before, and he just wakes up and he gives her a kiss on the forehead and heads out of the apartment. And he had no idea that that morning would change his life forever. He just left Carrie at his apartment, which doesn't really seem like a no strings attached thing. But he had felt like they got comfortable enough and he trusted her enough that like, hey, it's okay. You could just sleep in and leave whenever you want. It's all good with me. But as you could imagine, giving somebody a kiss on the forehead as you're leaving kind of starts to bring out a different level of feelings that's a little bit too comfortable, and it starts to feel a little relationshipy. And about 4 hours into Dave's shift, he received a text message from Carrie that was very different than the text messages that he usually received from Carrie. And the text just said, I think we should move in together. Dave was absolutely perplexed by this because the relationship that he thought they had was completely different than the energy that Carrie was giving him in that moment. And even though they were spending a lot of time together, it had only been 2 weeks. So saying we should move in together was a very large jump here. And she was very clear that she was completely okay with his initial boundaries that he set. But now she's tooting a completely different horn. And now she's saying 2 weeks in, let's move in together. And naturally, Dave replies to this text like, hey, I was very clear with what I was looking for, and just kind of tries to reset his boundaries like, hey, this is a no strings attached thing. I thought we were on the same page here. I'm not feeling this energy. And Carrie was not having it. Carrie started blowing up Dave's phone, and she was just getting more and more angry, like she was working herself up with each text message that she sent, getting ruder and meaner. And she even went on to say that Dave ruined her life, just absolutely jumping to crazy conclusions. She started saying, I never want to see you again. You ruined my life. I hate you. Just borderline psychotic behavior after 2 weeks of seeing somebody. And Dave was absolutely shocked by this behavior because he felt like he was getting to know her a little bit in that 2 weeks, but he realized that he had no idea who this girl was. They had spent some intimate nights together, but they were absolutely strangers when it came down to it. And she started acting completely different. And when lunchtime came around, Dave went back to his apartment to see if Carrie was there, but she was nowhere to be found. He was hoping maybe he could cool down the situation during his lunchtime, but she wasn't there. Over the course of 2 weeks, she had left some stuff at his apartment. They got pretty comfortable, but when he got there, none of her items were there anymore. She had packed up everything. There was no sign of Carrie at his apartment anymore. She just removed herself from his life. And Dave felt a little bit disappointed because he was pretty happy with this fling. He liked the setup that he had with this girl, but he was just like, it is what it is. I really am not looking for a relationship, even though I kind of like that girl. He just moved on with his life and respected that this fling was over. And the days go on, and Dave hadn't heard from Carrie in a few days. He just thought she got upset, she was looking for something else, but I'm not hearing from her anymore. She took all of her stuff from my apartment. I guess it's over. But then all of a sudden the texts start flooding in again, and they're even more abrasive, and they're even more consistent. And she starts calling him names and calling him a despicable human being and being even more mean and aggressive than she was before. And then she started taking it up a notch and telling him that she was going to tear his life apart. That her sole purpose in this life was to tear him down for ruining her life. She said she was going to destroy everything that he cared about. So this girl went from kind of upset to borderline crazy. And this is where Carrie's mother comes in. Carrie's mom, Nancy, said that Carrie was in an independent part of her life, and she had moved and taken this job to explore a little bit. And Carrie had mentioned to Nancy that she was seeing somebody a little bit, and that she was spending a little bit more time with them. So she was kind of aware of this romantic relationship. And Nancy knew that Carrie worked close to wherever this romantic partner lived. And Nancy had the sense that Carrie was spending a lot of time with this romantic partner that she didn't know the name of, which was Dave. And Nancy mentioned that her relationship with Carrie was very up and down. They had a rocky relationship, but it wasn't normal for Nancy to not hear from Carrie whatsoever. So she kind of knew something was off. And as these text messages and emails keep flooding into Dave's phone from Carrie, just threatening and crazy and kind of obsessed with him, he's getting a little bit scared, but he's just like, this is a weird breakup. I don't like this, but she's just texting me. He's just weirded out by this girl at this point. But one day when Dave is at work, 2 sheriffs show up to talk to Dave. And he's a little bit confused because he has no idea why 2 sheriffs would show up to his workplace to ask him questions. But they go on to explain that Carrie's mother, Nancy, had put a missing persons report out for Carrie because she had not heard from Carrie in a couple weeks. And the sheriffs start pressing Dave a lot because they're under the impression that Dave and Carrie were dating, like they were boyfriend and girlfriend, because of the way that Carrie was talking to Nancy about Dave. So they're grilling him like, how do you not know where your girlfriend is? And Dave's just trying to explain himself, saying like, that is not my girlfriend. Let me show you these text messages. I was very clear with her. Look how this girl is talking to me. And he shows them these horrible, mean, nasty text messages from Carrie that are just flooding into his phone on a daily basis. And once they saw that, they really pulled back and they were just like, this situation will resolve itself soon. This is just a weird, messy breakup. There's really no point in us interjecting into this. Because she's clearly not missing, she's just clearly upset about a breakup. And after these sheriffs showed up to Dave's workplace, Carrie actually started messaging her mom on Facebook to let her know that she was not missing. And she was just going on to say that she just doesn't want to come home right now. But she was sending her mom Happy Mother's Day texts and things of that nature. But as Nancy was pressing Carrie, trying to get more information from her, ask her how she is, trying to rekindle their relationship, Carrie just started sending her mom one-word text messages that were just getting nastier and more dismissive by the day. So even though Carrie's not missing, Dave doesn't know where she is. She's being super aggressive and mean to Dave, and now she's super aggressive and mean to her mom, but nobody's seeing her. Nobody really knows where she's at. And weeks pass, and Dave is still getting these horrible text messages. Carrie has not slowed down with the threats and the mean, aggressive words that she has for Dave. Like, she really hates Dave. But one day it gets a little bit worse because it's been a while since Dave has seen Liz, his first fling. But one day Liz shows up at Dave's apartment and is like, hey, we need to talk about something. Liz basically told Dave, you need to meet up with me today because I need to show you something very important. So Liz shows up to Dave's apartment and asks Dave to come outside and says, look at my car. And Liz's car is keyed repeatedly all the way around her car, like serious damage to Liz's car. And it turns out that Liz, also being harassed by Carrie for weeks at this point, she was receiving the same threatening emails and texts that Dave was receiving. Carrie was extremely jealous of Liz, and that was extremely unsettling. And at this point, Dave is like, this girl is stalking me, and now she's also stalking my first fling that she only saw for 3 seconds. But she's so honed in on me that she hates me so much that she also hates Liz. So Dave contacted a detective named Chris. Chris is a detective that specializes in domestic violence and stalking. And Chris is super familiar with cases like this, but he recognized immediately that this case was very unique. And he knew almost immediately that this was the strangest case that he ever came across. Because the abusive text messages that were coming from Carrie were initially coming from her phone. But as Dave was blocking her phone number, just trying to mute her, she started changing phone numbers. And Dave couldn't keep up with the amount of times that she was changing her phone number because Carrie was very good at computers. And she started texting Dave from 40 different phone numbers. And even though the phone numbers kept changing, he knew it was Carrie just by the verbiage and the tone. He knew that it didn't matter what number he blocked, he was still getting the next one from a different phone number. And the same thing started happening with emails. She started sending him emails from several different email addresses. And he was receiving over 125 messages a day from either text message or email from Carrie. And this is when it starts to really pick up. because she's not just saying threatening, mean things. She's starting to tell him that she's watching him. And she's telling him through text message what he's doing as he's doing it. Like, she literally has her eyes on him. To the point where if a woman walks into his mechanic shop, she starts texting him about talking to that other woman that is just a client of his. And she starts saying that she's going to go after every woman that he speaks to, that no woman that enters his life is safe. So Detective Chris starts to do a reverse stakeout, because he's aware that Carrie is clearly watching Dave. So he's trying to stay around Dave to try to find Carrie watching him. So he's at the same place. He's kind of stalking Dave as well, but it's a stakeout, trying to find any signs of Carrie in the area. Chris even went door to door with pictures of Carrie to all of the neighbors to see if they had seen her walking around or snooping around. But nobody in the area recognized her or had seen her recently. But the mind games didn't stop there. Carrie was so creative with the way that she was harassing Dave. One night she had texted him that she had moved into an apartment in the same complex that he lived in. And she even said, "Come over here, here's the address," and gave Dave her address. So Dave is so pissed at this point. This has been going on for months. These horrible text messages, and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna go over there and confront her. And he looks at the address, he walks out of his apartment, he goes and walks to where that apartment would be, and as he gets there, he realizes, oh, this apartment doesn't exist. There's 11 apartments in this apartment complex, and she said that she lived in the 12th one. And once he realized that it was the 12th one, he just felt that Carrie was watching him, that she must have been in the area and she was watching him walk aimlessly to this apartment that doesn't exist. So her mind games are getting deeper and weirder and more aggressive and more intricate. And these things just kept getting worse and worse and worse. Carrie started to send Dave pictures of Liz's house, his first fling. So naturally, Dave immediately goes over to Liz's house because he's like, I feel so bad that this girl that's stalking me is also harassing Liz, who has nothing to do with this. And once he gets there, not only did Carrie key Liz's car again, she was spray painting things on Liz's house. Just horrible insults on her walls. And now Liz and Dave are just so freaked out because these spray painted messages weren't on the outside of her house. They were on the inside of her house. So Carrie had broken into Liz's house. So now this case got even more dangerous. So Liz and Dave both call the police together because they need to report this. Now Carrie's breaking into Liz's house. Liz has kids. This isn't okay whatsoever. And naturally, during this time, Liz and Dave are spending more time together because they're both mutually getting harassed by the same person, and their relationship starts to rekindle a little bit, which makes Carrie even more mad because she's trying to keep him away from any other woman, but she's harassing a woman that he already had a fling with, and they're rekindling because of it. So now Dave is juggling having this woman stalker rekindling with his first fling, and now his baby mother, Amy, who's aware of the whole situation because she has to be. For the safety of Dave's kids, he has to update Amy with everything that's going on for his children's safety. Amy gets so uncomfortable with the whole situation that she actually says that Dave's kids aren't allowed to go to his apartment anymore, which of course she did. He has an active stalker that's breaking into people's houses. And she said that Dave couldn't go to her house because Carrie is obviously watching his every move, and Carrie can't know where Dave's kids live. Because if she hates a girlfriend, imagine how much she's gonna hate a baby mother and his kids. And it does not stop here. It just keeps escalating. Dave gets a call from Liz, and Liz is frantic. Liz had been staying at Dave's apartment because they rekindled a little bit, and she's so scared, and she starts telling Dave that somebody broke into his apartment and wrote in red lipstick all over his wall, basically threatening Liz, saying, "Go away, whore." And all of Liz's clothes that she had left at Dave's apartment had slashes through them, like somebody took a knife and stabbed her clothing and tore holes in them. So now Carrie had broken into Liz's house, and when Liz was spending time at Dave's house, she broke into Dave's house and destroyed all of Liz's things. So she's really honing in on Liz. And at this point, Detective Chris felt like he had enough for an arrest warrant for Carrie, because now she's broken into 2 places, threatening things on walls, destroyed clothing. He felt like, I definitely have enough to get an arrest warrant for this crazy woman. But the only problem is, Carrie is like a ghost. Nobody knows where she is. Her own mother doesn't know where she is. She has just went full rogue. Her only objective in her life is to stalk Dave, and nobody knows where this woman is. So this detective is just like, I can't do anything until I find her. And Dave is freaking out because the detective is like, yeah, I'll arrest this lady for you. She's done enough. This isn't just a basic stalking case. This is getting serious, and I'm willing to arrest her for you. But I cannot find her for you. So Dave's paranoia is through the roof. And at this point, this stalking has been going on for over a year. and it's taking a toll on everybody involved. When Dave would do anything, any activity, go anywhere, Carrie would tell him what he's doing, like she was watching him at all times. She would basically send him text messages narrating his life. And I mean everything. Even when he would go to dinner with his children, she was texting him, "I see you. Do you like what you're eating? That place is a dump. You're a piece of shit. Your kids are ugly." Just anything she could come up with, threatening him and making fun of him and just making his life a living hell. At this point, paranoia has just become Dave's life. And this woman was relentless. He could not do anything to slow her down. And just to take the edge off, Dave really started sinking into drinking. The only time he could have any comfort or relaxation is if he is a couple beers deep. And that's pretty much all he did. His life was a misery because of this woman. And one night, after a long shift, because he still has bills and still has kids, he's at the bar, tossing a couple back, trying to get the edge off, and he gets the worst text message he's gotten to this point. It was a text message from Carrie telling Dave that she set Liz's house on fire. And Dave is freaking out. He doesn't know if it's true. And he rushes over to Liz's house and he pulls up to the entire fire department outside of Liz's house, and her house is burnt to the ground. Carrie really set Liz's house on fire. And thank God Liz's kids weren't home that night. But Liz's pets were. Liz had 2 dogs, a cat, and a snake, and they all burnt to death in this fire. So clearly, Carrie is ready to hurt somebody. She really went and set Liz's house on fire. And as this investigation is evolving, the detectives involved are also getting scared because the stalking case is an issue. The threatening text messages are an issue. But it is very clear that this woman is not stopping and she's only escalating what she's doing. And she's very willing to commit murder. There's no telling that she even checked if Liz was home or if her kids were home. She just set the house on fire. So now everybody's getting even more worried than they have been this entire time. And at this point, Liz moved, obviously because her house burned down, but she also just wanted to get away from Dave, and she didn't tell Dave where she was moving, because if Dave knew where Liz was moving, then Carrie would eventually find out too. So she was just scared of the whole situation, and she just had to get out of there and get as far away from Dave as she possibly could. And obviously Dave understood that. He's like, yeah, protect yourself. I'm sorry I brought you into this. He knew that whoever he was affiliated with, Carrie would eventually go after, so he had no hard feelings about this situation. But this made Dave feel very lonely because him and Liz rekindled over this, and he felt as lonely as ever. Carrie went crazy. Liz removed herself from his life. His baby mother doesn't want him around his children or at her house. And he's just going at this alone, and the only partnership that he has is the text messages and emails coming to his phone. There's only one voice in his life, and it's Carrie's. And after the house was burnt down, the case went cold for a little bit. He wasn't hearing from Carrie quite as much. But during this time, another county sheriff decided to take on this case because he felt like it was very strange as well. This was Sergeant Jim from the Pottawatomie County Sheriff's Office, and he decided to meet up with Nancy, Carrie's mother, to get a little bit more information on her. And Nancy told the sheriff that she hasn't seen Carrie in 2 years. She's just went full rogue stalker. She said that Carrie told her that she had taken a job in Kansas and she just left her son with Nancy, and they had just have not heard from her. But Nancy still had a weird feeling about this because she's like, this isn't like her. She wouldn't just abandon her son with me. And at this point, she was aware of what Carrie was being accused of, but she just wanted to know that her daughter was safe. She was worried about her mental health and her housing. And as the sheriff is looking into Carrie a little bit more with the information that Nancy's giving to him, he uncovered that Carrie was struggling with bipolar disorder for quite a while. And she had issues with depression and taking her medication. She didn't really like to take her medication. And he came to the conclusion that this disappearance must have been some type of mental health crisis. You're telling me this is quite the mental health crisis. But like I said, the case went cold for a little bit. Nobody's really hearing from Carrie that much, including her mother. She's just went fully rogue. She's just went fully silent to everybody. And now that Liz is out of Dave's life, Liz moved away, Dave is extremely lonely. And as the texts kind of slow down from Carrie, he's like, maybe I could start dating a little bit again. I also want to mention that Dave had moved as well. And he didn't tell anybody where he moved. He tried to do it as slick as he possibly could because the case slowed down a little bit, and he thought maybe I could sneak away and get this woman out of my life. So then, once he felt like he was a little bit safe in a different area, he started to date again. At least he started to try to date again on those same websites. And he found a pretty little lady on this website and set up a date with her. She seemed nice and cute. And he went to the location where they scheduled their date, and he was waiting there for hours and hours and hours, and she just wasn't showing up. She completely stood him up. And right as he's about to leave, he gets a text. And it's from the woman that was supposed to meet him there. And he's expecting an apology, like, sorry I got caught in traffic, or sorry I got cold feet. But the text said, this is Carrie. So Carrie created a fake profile, catfish Dave, find out where he was, got him to a location at a restaurant to where she could pull up, see where he is, and follow him back to his new apartment. Carrie's playing chess, not checkers. And now that Liz is out of the picture, there became a new target for Carrie. She wasn't jealous of Liz anymore. She was jealous of Amy. And everything started to get worse and worse. She was fully honed in on Amy, the mother of Dave's children. And then Amy started to get these threatening text messages, the same that Dave was getting, the same that Liz was getting, and it seemed like she was following Amy and her kids everywhere, narrating Amy's life to Amy. She's gone full stalker mode, the same energy she was bringing to Dave, following him, now she's doing it to Amy. She was even keeping tabs on her kids. Amy would drop her kids off somewhere and she'd stay and watch her kids and then tell Amy what her kids were doing. So Amy's freaking out because it's not only her life that's in jeopardy, now it's her children's as well. It got to the point where Carrie was sending descriptive text messages to Amy about what she was going to do to her children. And her children were aware of it because they have to be. They're going to school, they're going to different places. They need to know what this woman looks like and what she has been saying so they know to not go with her somewhere. They have to be a little bit aware of the situation. And this is devastating because her son, her young son, started sleeping on the couch with a baseball bat just in case Carrie came to their house to protect his mom. And since this has been going on for so long and it's progressing worse and worse, Dave's dad forces him to buy a pistol. Dave didn't want to use it. He didn't want to shoot Carrie, but he just felt like, I need to have it in the house to protect my kids. I need it here. This woman has been stalking me for 2 years. It's a good tool to have. And at this point, Carrie has not been seen for over 2 years. But the text messages have not stopped this entire 2 years. So now the sheriff that's working with Nancy, her mother, asked if they could go see her apartment. And this is where it gets so bizarre. They go to Carrie's apartment and it looks like she just left, like with the clothes that she had on her back. She didn't clean up her house. She didn't pack anything. Her apartment looked like somebody that was expecting to come back later that day. So this woman had a mental crisis and just went crazy 2 years ago and never went back to her house. But one thing kind of made them flip the switch. They were aware that Carrie's father was very sickly and he was close to dying right around the time that Carrie disappeared. And Nancy was saying that she would never disappear like that, especially with her father in that state. She would not abandon their family during that time. And she was just pleading with the sheriffs to just look at it from a different perspective. And the sheriffs were also starting to feel that way. The way her apartment looked, they started to think that Carrie wasn't even alive. They just started to think there's no way this woman packed up and left like this. The way her apartment is like this, the state that her father was in, this just doesn't add up. And they start to think maybe this isn't Carrie. And this is where they turned to their IT guy. And a good IT guy is what really separates a good sheriff's department. This IT guy was brilliant. He even explains himself as borderline autistic, and he is just a savant with IP addresses and phone numbers and coding and making programs to find patterns and information. So they just give him all of the data that they could possibly find. So they give their IT guy all of the emails and text messages that have come from Carrie the entire past 2 years. And it was over 1 million. She had sent over 1 million emails and text messages to Dave and friends. And right away, the IT guy is like, this person's pretty slick. They are using private VPNs. If you don't know what a private VPN is, it changes your IP address. Your IP address is basically like if you send an email from your phone at home, it's using the Wi-Fi from your house, and that Wi-Fi box has an IP address. So it's technically like your internet address. They could locate where you are based on your IP address. But if you use a private VPN, you could technically send an email and it looks like that email is coming from Brazil. But Tony, this IT guy, isn't deterred whatsoever. He knows he could siphon through these. He thinks he could find her. So he actually builds a program. He builds his own program, he codes it himself, and the program's capabilities is basically he puts in all of this information and he could ask it specific questions to categorize all of these IP addresses in different ways to try to find patterns. So he inputs these 1 million IP addresses and he starts to ask it a series of questions. The first one being, how many of these are unique? Unique basically means that they're real. And it narrowed it down from 1 million to 13,000. That's much better. Then he asked it, can you show me the top 10 IP addresses used in this entire case? So which ones were the most frequent throughout the entire 2 years? Out of the 13,000 unique. And out of the top 10, 8 of them were private VPNs. which aren't very helpful because they're in Brazil, Turkey, all over the world. You can't really do anything with that. But the top one, the number one on the list, was 174716113. And this IP address was connected to a house in Iowa, specifically Council Bluffs, Iowa, which is right near their department, right in their neighborhood. And it was the home of a man named Todd Butterball. And I know we haven't talked about Todd, so this realization is extremely surprising. Not only because it's a completely new person, but because Todd Butterball works for Tony, the IP guy. Tony is Todd's boss. So this became a very complex situation and a very odd conversation to have. So naturally, the sheriff's department gets a search warrant for Todd's house. And they were initially very suspicious of Todd because he's also an IT guy, so he would know how to use all these VPNs. So they're like, let's search his house. Let's try to find any evidence. But they didn't really find much, and they knew Todd personally, and they're like, hey dude, what's going on here? Like, have you been doing this to these people? While you're working with us, while we're trying to figure out this case, you've just been harassing these people under our nose? But Todd is just adamant, like, guys, I don't know what you're talking about. I've been talking to you guys about this case. This was not me. I don't know how this happened. But then they asked Todd if anybody else was using his Wi-Fi that he was aware of. And he told them that he's been having an on and off girlfriend that he only sees once every few weeks. And he's been seeing each other, but it's a bit rocky, it's a bit casual. And he was saying that this girl was spending a lot of time at his house every once in a while because her house burnt down. The on and off girlfriend was named Liz. Liz Golier, the same woman that Dave was dating before Carrie. Think about that. Liz got her house burnt down by Carrie. Liz got her clothes stabbed through by Carrie. Liz got her car keyed by Carrie. Liz was getting threatening text messages and emails that she had proof were from Carrie. But now Carrie's main IP address is a home that Liz was staying at. Now all of the evidence is pointing to that Liz is impersonating Carrie, and she has been impersonating Carrie for over 2 years. And Liz was the stalker this entire time. At this point, it is fairly clear that Liz is the stalker. So the sheriffs have to tell Dave, because Dave was not scared of Liz. He was trauma bonded with Liz. He rekindled his relationship with Liz while they were both being stalked by Carrie. He had shared the same bed with her. They were spending a lot of time together. They rekindled their romantic relationship because they were both being stalked at the same time. But Dave didn't know that he was being stalked by the woman that he was sleeping next to. This was a devastating realization to Dave because his entire life was a lie now. He knew he had spent a lot of time with a woman that was harassing him consistently. But this is not even close to the end of this story. Stay with me. It gets so much worse. Because the sheriffs knew that Liz was impersonating Carrie, but they had no real proof of it other than the IP address. And now they've kind of come to the conclusion that they think that Liz killed Carrie, but they have no proof of it, so they can't even arrest her. So they start digging from old evidence because they were looking at the case through the lens that Carrie was the stalker and Liz was the victim. So they had a ton of information on Liz that she probably voluntarily gave to them, but now they got to look at all of this information through a new lens. And when they started to go through it again, they found a picture of Carrie's license plate in Liz's phone that before they didn't really suspect anything. But now they're like, you took a picture of Carrie's license plate. You killed her. But they have no evidence that she killed her. And the picture of Carrie's license plate in Liz's phone was from Christmas Eve 2012. And Carrie's vehicle was recovered in January 2013. And in the report, it's mentioned that there was fingerprints discovered on a mint container in Carrie's car. And when they compared Liz's fingerprints with the fingerprint on this mint container, they matched. So Liz was definitely in Carrie's car. So now they know that Liz had done something to Carrie for sure. She was there. But Liz has no idea that the sheriff's department is onto her. So she's still acting as if she can stalk freely. She doesn't think anybody thinks that she's doing it. So she just keeps acting like she's free. But the sheriffs put a little GPS tracker on Liz's car where they could monitor her GPS location all day, real time. And they found out that Liz is circling Amy's house on a daily basis, multiple times a day. So now she's fully stalking Amy and they're watching her do it. And now all the sheriffs are really concerned with Amy's well-being because they are suspecting that Liz killed Carrie and now she's honing in on Amy and she's around her house very, very often. So as they're trying to collect information on Liz, Dave obviously has to go on with his life, and he goes to visit his kids at Amy's house. Dave went home after visiting his kids, and he checked his bedroom for his gun because he always just likes to check it. He was uncomfortable having a weapon in his house, so he'd always check on it pretty often, and the gun was stolen. It wasn't in the case that he stored it. And obviously, Dave lets the police know right away because he knows who took it. And right after Dave's phone call to the police that his gun was missing, they get a phone call of a shooting. All it is that a woman has been shot, and she's saying that somebody shot her in the calf, and she's screaming and crying, and she's just saying, "Come here now, I know who did it," all this. Liz took Dave's gun and went and shot herself in the calf just to keep this narrative going that she was a victim, to remove herself from being a suspect. And when this call initially came in, the sheriffs were so worried that it was Amy that got shot, that Liz had stole the gun and went and shot Amy. And they were a little bit relieved when it was Liz that just shot herself. And once Liz recovered from shooting herself, that everybody knew that she shot herself, the sheriffs went and approached her to question her a little bit, but not from the angle that you're suspecting. They told Liz that they suspected that Amy shot her, feeding into the narrative that Liz wanted them to think was true. And Liz is so excited about this, and she immediately says, "Oh yeah, well, I wouldn't put it past her. She was always jealous of me." And she loves that the cops are eating up her narrative. But the sheriffs completely think it's her, and they're just trying to mess with her head a little bit and get her to start telling on herself. And Liz starts spewing all of this information, telling the sheriffs that Amy didn't like her or Carrie. She told them that Amy had threatened her that she was going to beat her up. And the sheriffs asked Liz to provide them with some proof or some information that they could frame Amy for being violent and threatening towards her. And immediately, like clockwork, Liz starts emailing herself as Amy, saying horrible, threatening things to her, even though now they know the IP address that Liz uses. So they're watching Liz threaten herself as Amy. Exactly what they thought she was going to do. The sheriffs are playing chess, Liz is playing checkers. And now that they kind of have a little bit of information on Liz and they're really messing with her head, they have Dave move back in with Amy to try to get Liz to kind of go crazy a little bit, to try to trigger her a little bit, to act out, because they have enough evidence. They just need to see her act a little bit violent and threatening. They need to ruffle her feathers a little bit. They know that Liz stalks Dave, and she's going to know that he moves back in with Amy, and she's going to go wild. And like clockwork again, as soon as Dave moves back in with Amy, they start getting calls from Liz going crazy. And she's asking them, how does Amy even have custody of her kids anymore after she shot me? Why does she get to be with Dave? But there was weird terminology in there. She wasn't saying like Dave is unsafe with Amy. She was saying, why does she get to have these children with Dave? Why does she get to live with Dave? It was very telling. She was clearly unhinged, but she was framing it as if she was outraged that Amy was allowed to do these things after she had shot her. And it sent Liz spiraling. And she started to try to frame Amy for killing Carrie as well. But while she was trying to frame Amy for shooting her and killing Carrie, she was basically just telling the sheriffs exactly what she did, because she thought the sheriffs thought that she was a victim of this. They completely fooled her. So she's just spilling the beans through these emails that she's sending to herself, but she's building a case against herself. And in these emails, Liz is saying things as Amy about the details of Carrie's murder, saying that she stabbed her in her car and she'll do the same to Liz. And this little key detail led the sheriff's department to go search Carrie's car again, and they found a large blood stain after they pulled up the leather of her seat, because they hadn't done that before. They weren't suspecting that Carrie had been killed. They thought it was just a missing persons case, and then they thought it was a stalking case. But now through this new lens, they're like, hold on, let's pull up this leather. Found a blood stain in her car. So now this car is like a murder scene. And now that they had this blood stain and they had these emails of Liz basically saying exactly how she killed Carrie, pretending to be Amy, they arrested Liz and they were like, hey, you played yourself. This is everything we know. We know you did this. You better just fess up now. And Liz is just going crazy and denying it and demanding an attorney, but she looks as crazy as ever. So now Liz is in custody, but now the trial starts. And it's such a bizarre trial, because how are you going to convince a jury that this woman Liz pretended to be another woman for 2 years, threatened and stalked an entire family, but stalked herself, burnt down her own house, killed a woman, killed all of her pets, moved to a different area, and has been so consistently stalking everybody in Dave's life, sending over 1 million messages over the course of 2 years. It is so bizarre that you almost can't convince a jury that one woman did this. Not to mention she shot herself in the leg. So this is just such an overwhelmingly bizarre case that they're worried that anybody is even going to believe this. And as the trial's going, the sheriff department is actually getting a little bit concerned because they don't have overwhelming evidence. They have emails kind of explaining what Liz did to Carrie through Liz's words, but they don't really have much evidence that she did it. So they're kind of scurrying for new information while this trial's going on because they think that she's going to walk. They think that she's probably going to get set free or at least get a minimal sentence because they can't really prove this craziness. So they go back to Dave and they're like, dude, do you have anything else that you haven't given to us? Are there any electronics that you haven't given us to search that we could find evidence? They're frantic at this point because they think this crazy woman's going to walk. And Dave was like, I'll go check my storage unit if I have any electronics. And he actually came up with a tablet, not like an iPad, but like an old Samsung Android kind of tablet that you have to put an SD card into. And Tony, the IT guy that found the IP address, the absolute genius, goes, let me get that. Let me dig into that a little bit. And he starts to look through it, and on the SIM card, everything's deleted. But that doesn't stop Tony. Tony's an IT genius. And he starts depicting the internal information on this SD card, and in the deleted information on this SD card, however he does it, he reveals an entire catalog of photos. And as he's scrolling through these photos that were deleted, he realizes that this is Liz's SIM card from that time. She had taken the SIM card out of her phone, put it into his tablet, and then deleted it all from his tablet, and then just left it with Dave, thinking, who's ever going to look through this? I deleted all the photos and it's a random tablet. Nobody's going to be able to connect this to me, especially because the photos are deleted. But Tony is a madman. And this photo album is filled with selfies of Liz because she's crazy. It's all just selfies of her and things of that nature, and it's clearly from Liz's phone. And amongst all of these random selfies and weird pictures of Liz's phone, he finds one photo that stands out to him a little bit, but he can't really tell what it is at first. And he says it kind of looks like a picture of a foot, but you can't see any toes. It just looks like the top of a foot contorted in an odd way. But Tony goes on to explain that the veins in the foot are a little bit odd, and he goes and researches it a little bit, and it looks odd because the veins are extremely visible, and it's a common thing after somebody gets killed that the veins kind of protrude and have a dark color. It's something that happens post-mortem. And another thing is that there was a distinct tattoo on this foot. And Tony brought that to Carrie's mother and was like, hey, did Carrie have a tattoo like this? And immediately Nancy goes, that is Carrie's foot. That is her tattoo. So Liz had a picture of Carrie's foot that had a distinct tattoo on it on her phone that she thought that she deleted and got rid of. But this was the proof that they needed. And they were able to bring that to trial, and Liz was found guilty. Not on everything, because how do you prove that much crazy shit that this lady did? But most of the stuff, and she got sent to prison for a very, very long time. And Carrie's family finally got the closure that they needed, because they just thought that Carrie abandoned their family and went crazy and was maybe homeless and stalking people. And even though you find out that your daughter and mother were killed by a crazy woman, it's better than thinking that your daughter or mother was that crazy woman. And even though they were dealing with the loss of Carrie, they felt like she was vindicated from being this crazy person. So there was a little bit of closure there for them. And Dave obviously felt so guilty about the situation because he felt responsible for Carrie's death, because he was the center of this love triangle between him, Liz, and Carrie that he thought was just a couple flings that he was having that ended up turning into a murder and 2 years of horrible stalking. Obviously, it's not his fault. He had no idea that Liz was a lunatic, but he just couldn't help to feel responsible. I told you guys that was a crazy story. That was one of the craziest stories I've come across in a very long time. If you love my content, if you enjoy these stories, please like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. I'm posting multiple times a week. I'm trying to get you guys the best content that I possibly can as fast as I can. I love you guys. I'm out.